So first question I have for you, and this might be semantics, but do you see a distinction between the phrase crowdsourcing and distributed work?
Yeah, I think there would be a difference. I mean, I think both of them are vague enough, and different people have their own ideas about what they mean. That
Sure.
This is only one man's opinion on the definitions, but I think people would look at something like LiveOps, which is a distributed call center company, as distributed work, but probably not crowdsourcing.
Okay.
And probably when Jeff Howe coined the term crowdsourcing, he didn't have companies like Odesk or Elance or Guru or Topcoder in mind, right? And so I think you see on one side you have those companies that are very clearly distributed work, right? And then I think you probably wouldn't look at Wikipedia as distributed work. I mean, even though it is, people don't view it so much as work, right? Or the way Facebook has translated their site. I mean, those seem like the really canonical examples of crowdsourcing, where there really isn't money changing hands, it's more people being proud of the work that they've done.
So is the difference in outcome?
Well, I think differences might be with crowdsourcing, you tend to imagine lots of people working on the same task, right? Whereas with distributed work, it might be just, I can hire a couple people around the world. I mean, that would sort of count to me as distributed work. Whereas with crowdsourcing, there's less of a feel of work, maybe, right? But I mean, they clearly are both parts of the same phenomenon, and there's lots and lots of companies that are at the intersection.
Right. So now, I know that there's criticisms that come with the idea of distributed work, things like lower wages, and that companies can take advantage. How do you address those criticisms?
Well, first of all, I think they're totally fair criticisms. I mean, I think that there should be a minimum wage, and I think any technology that's powerful enough to be interesting is powerful enough to cause trouble, right?
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
So I think that there's lots of sort of new ethical questions that I don't necessarily have answers to. I think that globalization is always an issue, right? And I think that it's sort of inevitable, right? That as things globalize, it's harder to regulate what's going on. We need to figure out how to do it.
So is the key to continue the conversations around it as opposed to trying to squelch those criticisms?
Well, yeah. I mean, we invite criticism. I mean, we try to get public policy people and legal experts interested in what we're doing. And that sometimes leads to legal inquiries.
Sure.
But we would prefer to see clear definitions and regulations. Actually, the one problem that I have as a businessman trying to raise investor money is that it's a completely unregulated industry, and clearly there will be regulation. So that's uncertainty, which is bad for business.
Interesting. So now, I know that a lot of the workforces that are tapped for distributed work would not ever qualify themselves as workforces. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting, right? I mean, people always ask me, people work for virtual currency, right? Then they say, you're exploiting people, you're paying them in fake money, right? And if I had to guess, I think that in 10 years, people might not see paying people in virtual currency as exploiting or fake money. They'll say this is another currency that people want, and it's legitimate that people want that, and you're just paying them in something that they want. But there does seem to be something tangibly different about paying somebody in cash and paying people in virtual currency, and certainly it's regulated differently today.
Right. Now, speaking of virtual currency, and this is the last question I have for you.
Sure.
I'm fascinated by that whole arena. Are you surprised at the allure of virtual currency? I mean, in your wildest dreams, would you have looked and said, wow, because it's a pretty significant part of your business, right?
Yep,
it's
absolutely.
a considerable part. Are you surprised at the uptake on that?
Well, I guess sort of. I mean, I'm fascinated by it, and I'm sort of enamored with it, right? I mean, I guess from my perspective, like, what's like virtual currency? Kind of real currency, right? I mean,
Sure.
Most of what we do isn't buying food; it's buying, virtual stuff, right? Like, watches that have a fancy logo. I mean, that's virtual currency. Or wine. I mean, come on, can we really tell the difference between $1,000 bottle of wine and $10? I mean, I can't,
Sure,
right? But
sure.
So, I don't know. I feel like virtual currency really mirrors real currency, and that's one man's perspective. And I will say it is pretty incredible, though, how passionately people feel about their virtual currency.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks.